we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Welcome, live from Little Rock. It's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm Shane Stacks, your host. So glad you're joining me on this beautiful Central Arkansas day. It's very nice out there. Day before Easter, very nice Easter holiday weekend for folks that are partaking in such festivities. Would remember, folks, that this is one of the reasons that we do this as an interactive live Geek Talk Radio show. I don't know of anybody else doing that, so it can be interactive. Sometimes we wear out the phone, sometimes we don't. But if you feel like calling in, you can always call me at 501-823-0965. That's 501-823-0965. And you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. And speaking of Shane Plays, ShanePlays, go to ShanePlays.com, and I always have show notes up. So there's show notes right now. There's a blog post on the blog that has show notes for today's show, including, maybe any news items we mentioned, what's coming next week, the tweet of the week, and then also information on our guest. We're joined today, I'll introduce them here in a moment, by Phillip, Daigle, and Amber Scott from Beamdog. And Beamdog are doing incredible things with the Baldur's Gate computer role-playing game. So really glad to have them on. In fact, I'm shocked that they're on because they're releasing their newest expansion or their new expansion next weekend. So I know that they're in crunch time. So I'm very, very, very glad that they chose to spend some time with us today. We'll talk to them here in a moment. Remember, you can go to ShanePlays.com, get the show notes. This show does go out, even though it's live Geek Talk Radio. It does go out as a podcast a couple of days after the show on the blog, on iTunes and Stitcher and other fine podcast directories. And, of course, you can listen on the radio or online. There's some people listening, in Central Arkansas, metro area, we hit 700,000 people. And then there's people listening via the live stream. So however you're listening, thanks so much. And we're always at 96.5 FM The Answer in Central Arkansas. And then you can go to 96.5fmtheanswer.com no matter where you are and listen to the live stream link. So last, we're always carried a week delayed on Krypton Radio. KryptonRadio.com is SciFi for your Wi-Fi. Give a big shout out to Gene Turnbow and those folks over there doing that cool geek internet radio. So Phillip and Amber, are you with me?
We are
Hello,
here.
hello.
All right. Hey to both of you. Now, did I get your names right?
You did indeed. A
Okay.
lot of people pronounce my last name incorrectly as Daigle, or they just say Daigle or something.
Yeah.
But you got it right.
I got it right by pure accident. Okay. I'm about 50-50. So really glad that you're with me today. Like I said, I know that you've got to be in crunch time so wow. Thanks so much for joining me. And I am looking forward to learning more about what you're doing at Beamdog and with Baldur's Gate Sage of Dragonspear specifically. Before that, we normally have a news segment before the first break. Now, I'm not going to have one today. I want to give plenty of time, to talk to you about what you're doing at Beamdog. But I've just, there's pretty big geek stuff going on right now. So we got to address one thing. And Zach, the question on America's mind right now is what? What's that question?
Tell me, do you bleed?
That's what everybody wants to know. Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. Yes, I saw it Thursday night. Have either of y'all had a chance to see it yet?
I have
Seen it.
Okay. Well, I'm not going. Next week's show is going to be superhero movies, and then DC Comics is doing a lot of rebirth announcements right now on their comic line. That's what we're going to talk about next week. Today, I don't want to go into spoilers or anything like that, but I did want to let people know that I've got a spoiler-free knee-jerk review up on YouTube. And it's also, I don't think it's on the blog yet, but it'll be there. But you can go to my YouTube channel, which is linked off of ShanePlays.com. And there's a spoiler-free knee-jerk review. And then I also ran into my buddy Michael Brown from Brain Trust, which is a kind of a geek quiz show that's on YouTube. I ran into him coming out of the theater, and he was recording some reactions. So I made it on that video by pure just happenstance, and that was a lot of fun. And I've got that linked on the show notes, too. So, now, no spoilers, but what did you think, Phillip?
I don't think it's a terrible movie. I know that there's a lot of reviews going out there that say it's bad or something
Right.
like that, but I feel like they perhaps tried to do a little bit too much, and the movie suffered for it.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't know. If I could go back in time and do it again, I probably would have just watched it at home rather than gone to the theaters to see it.
Yeah. Well, Zach, my producer's in there looking hurt like a puppy dog because he's going to see it tonight. He's a big geek. So here's the thing. Like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but one of the points of my spoiler-free review was if any movie needed re-editing, this is one of them.
Yes.
But I do not.
Definitely.
I'm with you. I don't think it's a terrible movie. The last I looked is like 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think it deserves that.
Too low.
Yeah.
Way too low.
I don't think it deserves that. It's a good action flick, and if you like superhero movies, you're going to have fun. But there's just moments that are uneven, and there's a whole lot more in my review, and I'll talk about it more next week. But what we're going to do with this show today is talk about Beamdog Incorporated, and then what you're doing with Baldur's Gate, Sage of Dragonspear. So if you would, Phillip, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do at Beamdog, and then we'll do that with Amber Scott as well when you're finished.
So, for anyone who didn't catch it, my name is Phillip Daigle, and I'm the lead designer at Beamdog. And so on Dragonspear, I was sort of a director as well, so basically deciding critical plot moments, what kind of combat we would use, what kind of characters we would build, that sort of thing. So kind of high-level vision ownership of the project.
Okay. So you're a developer, but with Sage of Dragonspear, which is an expansion and an interquel, if you will, between Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, you also you stepped into a more of a role than just a lead developer or lead designer. You're also directing what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, we're a small team, so everybody wears a lot of hats here. I mean, I've done everything from writing to design to a little bit to scripting here and there. Everybody's touched almost every part of this game in some way. People have different focuses, to be sure, but we're a very, very multidisciplined team.
Okay, so how large? If you don't mind me asking, how large is Beamdog?
I think we just recently hit 45 people.
Okay, so that's considered a small team in this level of game development.
Not everybody is working on the game as well, and that includes people who are like doing QA and that sort of thing.
Okay.
The team that worked on Dragonspear itself probably fluctuated anywhere from like 10 people up to 30 at times.
Okay. All right. So Amber, what do you do with Beamdog?
I do everything that Phil doesn't do.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's nice and tidy.
Phil is actually like 3 slightly smaller men stuffed into a Phil-shaped body.
Okay.
Just based on the amount of work he does at Beamdog.
Right.
Which is a lot.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm stunned that the lead designer or developer, director, or whatever on a game that is going to launch in a few days is even with us today. So that amazes me.
Well,
My blood
I
is
can tell
entirely
you later a little
caffeine
bit
now,
about
so.
our sort of crunch philosophy and how that works. But I came from a tabletop background. I was a tabletop RPG writer I still am technically, for over 12 years now.
Okay.
Worked for Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, White Wolf, all the big names.
All that.
And,
okay, I did not know. I knew you did some
for-
writing, but I wasn't aware that you had that tabletop background.
Yeah, that's where I started. And so when Beamdog was looking for a new writer, I was recommended through a friend of a friend as someone who knew the Forgotten Realms. I love Baldur's Gate. I've been a Baldur's Gate fan like my entire life, ever since the game came out in 98. And I did some contracting for Beamdog, and Trent and Phil liked my work, and they hired me as a full-time writer. I was a writer for about a year and a half, and then I got promoted to marketing and publishing coordinator, which is what I do now.
Okay, and then I imagine you still get sucked into some other stuff on occasion. Does that happen? Yeah,
like I said, whatever Phil isn't doing, if people go to Phil and he can't help them, they come to me.
So, speaking of how you got into the computer game development industry, is it still, pretty much who you know? I mean, I know that people can break in, but the majority of the jobs come through who you know.
It is, in a sense. I mean, it's who you know and what you can do are the two major things.
Right.
A degree is always going to help you. I mean, every major video game developer has that human resources wall that says, do you have a degree? No? Well, go away.
Okay.
And there are ways around that, but I would say that the majority of the people here at Beamdog, it was through people that they know, or we saw something that they did and we approached them.
Okay.
Very, very sort of informal.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I mean, there's every industry has an element of that. I just get a sense talking to a lot of designers and then reading a lot of interviews and articles that, that definitely plays a role in, I guess, getting access to the people you need to talk to or be reached out to by. So I want to give a quick shout out to the Wizards D&D Twitter account. They just tweeted out this show going on live right now. Appreciate that. I don't know if Greg Tito set that up to go to automatically or if he's listening, but and I know that Trevor Kidd reached out yesterday and said, hey, is your show today? And so I think he was wanting to listen today. So Greg and Trevor, anybody else who may be listening from D&D, guys, glad to have you and thanks for the support. So I'll tell you, now Amber's calling you Phil. Is it okay if I call you Phil or do you prefer Phillip?
Well, I guess you can twist my arm and do it.
Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do before the first break, I'd like to talk a little bit about the state of the computer RPG industry, and then after the break, go more into Baldur's Gate and your expansion. Are you guys cool with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So what do you feel, and this is open, either of you can answer, both of you can answer. Well, what do you feel is the health, the state of the computer RPG industry right now?
Well, Shane Plays. It's funny you should mention that because we have a digital magazine that came out this year.
Oh, okay.
The first issue launched in February, and it's called The Familiar. You can read it on thefamiliar.beamdog.com, and it's also free on the App Store and Google Play. And our very first issue was called The State of the Industry, and it was all about CRPGs and making a comeback. And our takeaway from it was that it is a really healthy industry right now, and that it's a great time to be a gamer. We talked to a couple of people when we were sort of researching the issue, Fergus Arcourt from Obsidian and Sven Vink from Larian Studios, who did Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition, and Dan Tudge from Enspace, who did Sword Coast Legends, and everyone was just very, very happy to talk about these great games that they're making and how much of a reaction they've gotten from the fan base, because CRPGs are so popular and they haven't been supported for a while, and now we're seeing like this great resurgence in CRPG support.
So I think this is kind of a softball question from my perspective, but I'd like to get y'all's perspective on it. I mean, how much of a role has Kickstarter played in that?
Oh, it's been massive. I mean, just look at what Obsidian did with Pillars of Eternity. I mean, that right there was sort of the focal point of the CRPG resurgence for a while. Right. And a lot of what they did, I mean, at the time, if you had shopped the idea around to a bunch of publishers and said, hey, you guys should fund this, sort of throwback game that has a lot of classic elements, I don't think they would have gotten anywhere near as far as they did. I think that publishers had to see that the community was deeply hungry for these sorts of games, and we're incredibly happy to see it. I mean, a rising tide raises all boats, and we're definitely one of those boats.
And I get a sense, it seems like there's friendliness among the publisher or the developers now. I see developers promoting each other's Kickstarters, promoting each other's games, being very friendly with each other. So I really like to see that. So,
the CRPG community is extremely tightly knit. I mean, we're constantly chatting back and forth with the guys over at like Enspace or Obsidian. Enspace did Sword Coast Legends recently. And we're always like, hey, can I try out, an early build of your game, that sort of thing. And it's great because the alternative would be terrible, like closed door secrecy, lots of competitiveness in a mean-spirited sort of way. I've seen that in other genres, and it's no fun. So we're very, very happy to have such a great, positive, tightly knit community here.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Absolutely. And Shane, you mentioned earlier about is it who you know in the games industry? And it definitely is, but something that a lot of people miss is you can always know more people. Like, the RPG community is so friendly and so open that you're not stuck with whoever you know at a given moment. Conventions are a great way to meet people. We were just at GDC last week. We met a ton of people who are interested in Baldur's Gate, interested in Beamdog, and wanting to support us or work for us. And I've never met a person who works in the role-playing or the CRPG industry who was like, no, I don't want to talk to anybody new. You know, everyone is very, very open to meeting new people and trying to support people coming into the industry because you can only get so far with the same team of people. Life happens, people move, people want to work in different industries. And so it always is in the benefit of a company to support new people who are coming into the industry.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, my experience reaching out to folks, I've had, I mean, just with Beamdog, for example, you know, I reached out to Trent Oster, you know, who is a BioWare co-founder, and he was very friendly, immediately, you know, brought both of you into the conversation, and there was, you know, there wasn't any weirdness. It was, you know, everybody was very friendly, and it was like, yeah, sure. You know, I've had great experiences with like Chris Avalone. I've actually had, you know, I've talked with InSpace, and I've had Ash Sevilla from InSpace on the show. Chris Perkins has been on the show. Again, you know, I mentioned Greg Tito and Trevor Kidd. You know, Mike Merles, I've exchanged stuff with him on Twitter. I haven't run into anybody who is like an elitist snob or anything like that. So, you know, I'm glad to hear that.
I think games have really changed over the past 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, I think it was a very closed-door system still. And I think now people are realizing that the more you bring the community in, so the more you embrace them, the more you put yourself out there, the better your game does and the better the game becomes, because you get a lot of feedback that you wouldn't get if you were behind closed doors for 4 years until you finally revealed your product.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with that. You know, it's there's definitely more of a open communication, which I think social media has, you know, helped with that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple more questions on the industry, and then, like I said, well, you know, I do want, if people are listening, just tuning in, I'm talking with Phillip Daigle and Amber Scott from Beamdog, and they have done the Baldur's Gate Enhanced Editions, and now they have an expansion for Baldur's Gate called Sage of Dragonspear that we're going to be talking about for the majority of the show. And you can always call it 501-823-0965 or tweet me at ShanePlays if you have a question or a comment for Beamdog. But what is considered now? What's considered a good seller? You know, I know like in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, maybe even 2000s, it'd be like, we have to sell X amount of units in order to be considered profitable. And I don't, you know, I'm not asking you to get into, you know, numbers or stuff that might be proprietary or kind of uncomfortable. You want to keep close to the vest. But in general, what is a good selling computer RPG these days?
I've got no idea. Can I say that as the marketing coordinator of the company?
We're not in this for profit. We're in this for the love of the industry. Yeah.
Exactly.
That might be a little too true in some cases, but
all right.
It depends on the budget, right? So, like, if you produce like a small, you know, $500,000 Kickstarter thing, if you sell, you know, 100,000 units, that's an amazing success. That's gonna, you know, be huge profits for you. It's gonna be enormously popular. Obviously, we can't reveal like budget or any information for our current projects like that.
Right.
But I mean, if we sold 1 million copies of, say, Siege of Dragonspear, we would be incredibly pleased.
Okay.
And I mean, we feel that's entirely within the realm of possibility.
Oh, okay. All right.
In terms of overall games, that's a very small number. I mean, you know, you look at the big blockbusters, Halo, Call of Duty, those titles, they need to sell at least, you know, 10, 20 million copies.
Yeah, they're like working on like movie economics, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And so we prefer. Sorry, go ahead, Amber.
Beamdog is kind of an unusual company in that, you know, we're very small, but we're very experienced. Trent and Cam Topher's our other owner, who was the lead programmer at BioWare back in the day. They came from AAA. You know, they came from the big industry game stores or game companies. So they've already sort of made all the mistakes that small companies do and have learned from them, and we are benefiting from their great experience. So you mentioned, you know, we're here on your show, and we have a launch on the 31st where Dragonspear releases on Windows, Mac, and also Linux on Steam. And we're pretty relaxed because Trent and Cam don't let us do crunch. Like, they're very anti-crunch.
Wow.
just another release for us. You know, it's just like putting out a patch. It's just like putting out an update. We're not supposed to work any overtime. You know, I had to ask Trent for permission to come in on a Saturday to do this.
Oh, wow.
This call, and he's like, well, as long as you guys feel like, you know, you're balancing your work.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you know, because a lot of people think of what was it, the EA spouse, the EA widow thing. Do you remember that when that was such a big deal? And, you know, there's a lot of horror stories I hear. I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to work in the games industry. So that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. You know, not only
it's very unusual from what I've heard for
Okay.
Beamdog. And like I said, it comes from their experience. And so when you're talking about how many, you know, copies do you want to sell, of course we want to sell a lot of copies of the game. And of course we want to make back the money that we invested in its production. Like, you know, that's step one is breaking even, and step two is profit. But our bigger focus is, first of all, putting out a game that people will like. We actually pushed the release back on Dragonspear a couple of months because we decided it wasn't at the quality we wanted. And so we went back and did some more work on it, and also supporting it. You know, we still update Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, which came out in like 2012 or something, Phil? Yes? 2011?
2011, actually.
Oh.
2011, you know.
Okay.
And so how many game companies out there are still updating and supporting a 5-year-old game? Well, Beamdog is, because that's one of our core kind of philosophies.
Right, and that shows the love of the games and the gamer, your customers. It's not just for let's turn a profit and move on. You know, there's a love for what's going on here. So, you know, kudos.
And there's business components as well. I mean, we're in a very lucky position, similar to Valve and Blizzard, where we self-fund the development of these games. So if we had signed a publisher to do Siege of Dragonspear, that would typically entail something like, okay, you have to have this ready by this date if you're going to receive your next payment from us. And that results in a lot of crunch, because it's hard to schedule games properly because they're extremely complex. And that's where a lot of crunch in the industry comes from, is trying to meet dates that aren't necessarily realistic in order to keep getting your funding. And as I said before, we're very lucky to be in that sort of Valve Blizzard space where we don't have to worry about that as much.
Right. And it's interesting that everybody that you mentioned there puts out consistently high quality stuff. So sounds
taking your time results in great games.
Yeah, wow, imagine that. Okay, well, I do want to get to a break, because speaking of the business component, I got to pay bills around here too. So we're going to take a quick break. We get back, I want to talk about, you know, Baldur's Gate, Siege of Dragonspear. I want to get into the game itself. I appreciate you taking some time and sharing some insight into the industry itself. So there's a lot of people, including myself, that just love that stuff. So it's our sports center when we get to hear this kind of stuff. So, all right, we're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll have more with Phillip and Amber from Beamdog and Baldur's Gate, Siege of Dragonspear. Go ahead and take us to a break, Zach.
Hold on to your butts.
June 11th to 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock, the River City Comic Expo is Arkansas's largest comic, toy, game, cosplay convention, and now features the Little Rock Picture Show. Guests for 2016 include Neil Adams, Mike Zeck, James Aubert, Larry Hama, Michael Golden, and Arkansas's own Mitch and Elizabeth Brettreiser, John Lucas, and Dusty Higgins. You'll find booth after booth with artists and dealers representing comics, toys, books, movies, games, and so much more. So come on out to the River City Comic Expo, June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock. RiverCityComicExpo.com.
Fairly alarmed here.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
MegaWars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, we're back. Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm just pleased to be joined. I'm as pleased as I could be to be joined by Phillip Daigle and Amber Scott from Beamdog Incorporated. They've kind of made their name in the past few years for doing the enhanced editions of the beloved Baldur's Gate computer role playing game, Dungeons and Dragons franchise, and now. They are risking fame and fortune by assaulting yet another foe and going on a quest to launch their own expansion for the franchise. That's both intimidating and exciting stuff. So, guys, if you would tell us a little bit, because there's probably people listening who aren't super familiar. They know Baldur's Gate. All right, because it's a beloved computer game franchise. I would say you had the Gold Box games from SSI, and then you have Baldur's Gate from BioWare, and those are the two big, really well-remembered, beloved D&D computer RPG franchises, and just RPG franchises in general. So, if you would, tell us a little bit about the Enhanced Edition, what those are, and how they've done, and then let's swing it over into the Sage of Dragonspear.
So the Enhanced Editions, starting with Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, came out in 2011. And then Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition came out in 2013. And back in 2010, we had sort of as a company decided that the direction we wanted to go in was we want to overhaul games. We want to take classic games that you know and love, but that run kind of poorly on modern machines and bring them into the future and bring them into the present day, I should say. So Baldur's Gate, classic game. Everybody loves it. Beautiful Forgotten Realms setting, awesome D&D rules, very, very deep tactical game. Fondly remembered, but it ran really, really poorly on modern machines. And in order to get it running well, you had to track down a bunch of mods and install them. And for a lot of people, that's no big deal. But for a much, much larger audience, it's sort of intimidating and a bit of a pain in the ass to set all that up. So what we did was we took the Baldur's Gate code, the Infinity engine that is behind the game, and we basically upgraded it a whole ton so that it would run well on modern systems. And then in addition to that, we decided, you know what, this game is beautiful and it deserves to be on tablets. So we ported it to iPad, we ported it to Android, and then later as well, we ported it to phones. So now you can whip out Baldur's Gate on your Android phone and play it on the bus.
And what is that experience like doing it all? I mean, I guess it's all mouse clicks anyway, so I guess that's just replaced by touches. But, what kind of feedback have you had on that?
So initially the idea was, oh, well, this will easily go to the iPad because it's indeed all mouse clicks.
Right.
But very early in the process, we realized, you know what, there's a lot more to a mouse than just a pointer. There's left clicking, there's clicking and dragging, there's all sorts of stuff like that. So we had to make a significant number of modifications to make it play well on an iPad because a lot of our assumptions just turned out to be wrong. So we've been consistently refining and tweaking the tablet and phone interfaces over the last few years. And we're not done. After Siege of Dragonspear is out, we're going to continue to upgrade these interfaces and make them feel excellent. They're great now, but we know that we can push them even further.
All right, so there's. Oh, go ahead, Amber.
I mentioned earlier that we were at GDC last week, and at one point I was at a party, and of course it was extremely loud and extremely tight quarters because it's a convention, and he sort of got wedged into, against a wall with a bunch of strangers, and people would be shouting, "Hey, who do you work for?" "Oh, I work for Beamdog." "Who?" And it was pretty fun. So I had a pocket full of business cards, and I'd pull it out and give it to someone if I was talking to them. And the look on their face when they saw the Baldur's Gate logo was just incredible. Their eyes would light up. They'd go, "You do Baldur's Gate?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I work for Baldur's Gate."
Yeah.
And I'd say, we do the enhanced editions. We upgraded it so you can play it on your modern platforms. You can even play it on your phone. And I had it running on my phone in my other pocket, and I just pull it out and be like, "Oh, look, I'm in Candlekeep. Look, there's Ryan." Wow. And people were just flipping out. Like, they couldn't believe you could just go play Baldur's Gate right now on your phone and how good it looked. And
wow.
That was really exciting.
I mean, I did realize that that Siege of Dragonspear, it was coming out soon for Android and iOS, but I guess I hadn't put that much thought into it because obviously the enhanced edition has to run that way too because this is an expansion for the enhanced edition. So there are a lot of people in the hardcore RPG community. I'm looking at you, RPG Codex, that if it's on a tablet, it must somehow be lacking, right? If it was designed for a tablet, but Baldur's Gate was not designed for a tablet. You ported it over. So does it feel like you're playing Baldur's Gate, or does it feel limited somehow? Or
no, the core game is 100% Baldur's Gate. There's nothing you can do on the desktop that you can't really do on iPad or phone. Every single bit of depth is there. It's the same game basically. The interface just changes.
Okay, so
every single element is there.
That's really cool. So can you save scum? Can you just save and save and save, or are you limited to your saves on a tablet or a phone?
No, it's, to get into a little bit of technical detail, every application on iPad or Android has a certain amount of space that it can use for saves, but Baldur's Gate saves are so tiny that, you could have hundreds and you won't really notice anything.
Okay. All right. Because I have to admit, and there are situations where the way I make my way is by save scumming, especially when I'm playing on a higher difficulty. So
yeah, well, I don't think anyone's going to judge you for that.
The Siege of Dragonspear interface has been vastly updated, and after Dragonspear comes out, we're going to be porting all the improvements we made back to Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition and forward to Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition, so you can have a consistent play experience.
Wow.
And one of the upgrades we made is that there are now 4 quick save slots that rotate. So if you want to keep quick saving and never actually go to option save game, you actually have 4 quick save slots, so you're not always overwriting the same save.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so the enhanced editions are updated versions of the engine that will run better on modern computers, and you can also run them on tablets and phones. Is that and it's got
cross-platform multiplayer.
And you can do multiplayer right out the gate without needing. Okay, which is cool. But the story, the game experience is the same.
So another thing that we noticed, one of the first games that we ever overhauled was MDK2, sort of like a classic BioWare action shooter game from the early 2000s. We took that game and we made MDK2 HD, and it was great. I mean, it looked fantastic. It played great. It was fun. But what we discovered after releasing that was that a lot of people were happy that we had done an HD remake or an enhanced edition, but they wanted more stuff. Like, they had already played that game, and so they didn't really feel like playing it again, but just looking prettier. So with the enhanced editions, one of the things that we've done are add a bunch of new content that you can get, like new quests, new characters, new items, all sorts of stuff like that. Now, this is optional, of course. You can turn it off, that sort of thing. But that's what people were asking for. They wanted new stuff to do, and we were very, very happy to give it to them. So in Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, we gave them a new character called Rasad. He's a monk. We gave them a new character called Nira. She's a wild mage. And we added another character named Dorn. He's a blackguard, which is sort of like an anti-paladin. And they've all got their associated quests, and they were very, very well received. And then in Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition 2, or I should say Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition, we added all those characters back, and then we added yet another one named Hexat, who's sort of a vampire thief.
Ooh.
And the response was just fantastic. People were very, very excited to see new Baldur's Gate content, new dungeons, new adventures. And that sort of laid the groundwork for us to then say, you know what, we're ready to do a standalone sort of big adventure on our own.
Okay, so now Amber, as a writer, did you do were you a writer on either the new on the new stuff for Baldur's Gate 1 or 2 Enhanced Edition?
No, I came into the company after Dragonspear had started, and they brought me in specifically to do writing for Siege of Dragonspear.
Okay.
So that's where all of my sort of contributions lay.
Okay, so I'm curious, maybe Phillip knows, how difficult was it adding new material to an existing game but make it feel like the existing game? You know, so like, hey, this is a different writer, you know, or something like that.
It was a challenge. Andrew Foley and Dave Gross, two other writers that we had working on the Enhanced Editions, they wrote those new characters. And it took a lot of trial and error to sort of recapture the style of Baldur's Gate and the feeling of Baldur's Gate. Writing new content for characters that have been laying there for 15 years, it's not easy. There's a mountain of existing content that you need to examine, and then beyond that, there's also expectations that players have that might not, you know, be realistic because they're remembering something they played 15 years ago, but they have a perception of how the character is.
Yep.
And so we had to find a happy place between those 2 points.
So are you
beyond the writing? Beyond the writing, it was difficult to figure out how do we build Baldur's Gate areas again. We have to build these 3D areas at the right distance, the right angle, the right style to match the existing stuff that's, 15 years old. So there's a lot of reverse engineering and sort of game archaeology, I guess, is a good term for it.
Wow. So a couple of points there. One, I'm pretty sure I saw in an interview with you with Game Reactor that the original assets had been backed up, but they got corrupted, so you had to recreate all the artwork for the games. They
were corrupted in the sense that a garage got flooded and destroyed them all. So yeah.
Wow.
I mean, old games like this, they can fit. You've got an external hard drive or a disc or whatever, and that's the entire game with all the original assets on it. It's very small compared to modern games. And so it got put in storage and
got flooded
and was just wrecked by the elements.
Wow. So it actually had a physical random encounter that messed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
so.
did.
Wow.
Like water damage.
Wow. I don't know why that stuff is so fascinating to me, but it is. But I love reading books like, we had the original code backed up here, and then this guy got mad and stole the disc, and then he put it in his garage, and then a tornado hit. So I don't know why that stuff's so fascinating, but it is. But the other thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about the difficulty of writing for an old game is, are you all familiar with that kind of slang term? It's called headcanon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so people have a headcanon of what, and headcanon for the people, like what he's talking about, there's canon, which is the established, this is the way the story is, this is the continuity, this is how the characters act, and everybody who plays that game has a different headcanon of how Minsk should act, or how this should happen, or they may even forget what order stuff happened or something like that, because it's amazing when you go back 15 years later, the stuff you thought you remembered that you got wrong. So you're kind of up against headcanon, and people treasure their headcanon because that's how it is. Don't mess with it, and so I'm sure that was a challenge, but it sounds like the feedback has been good. Now, what I'd like to do now, if you want to speak anything more about Baldur's Gate or the Enhanced Editions or anything like that, feel free. If not, we can swing on over into Sage of Dragonspear and talk about what's new.
Dragonspear.
I think,
very excited about
Dragonspear, which is actually a castle, right, in the Baldur's Gate Forgotten Realms area. And this stuff is right out of the tabletop Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms setting.
I mean, you talk about game archaeology and cool facts. I mean, Wizards of the Coast have been an amazing partner. First of all, they're extraordinarily supportive. They love the game as much as we do, and so they basically have done everything they can to help us out. And they gave us a PDF file of every second edition book ever written. Which now I'm not saying that I spent a week at Beamdog just reading old second edition material and calling it research, but it was a very important part of our development process in Dragonspear. And there was a module called Hordes of Dragonspear that detailed Dragonspear Castle, and we delved, really deeply into it and pulled out anything that seemed a little bit interesting. Like, for example, in Hordes of Dragonspear, it mentions that there's a Shrine of Tempest in Dragonspear's courtyard called the Hold of Battle Lions. And I was like, oh, well, that was however long ago in the Forgotten Realms timeline. Even though it's been all taken over by bandits and things, maybe it's still there. And so we wrote a subquest where you find some of the, original artifacts from the Hold of Battle Lions.
Oh,
and
that's
use
great.
Them to do a little quest and get a blessing from Tempest.
So people who are versed in the tabletop lore of the Forgotten Realms area that this goes on can definitely find stuff in the game that will reward.
They will have a great time. We wrote half of the game for those people because that's how Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 were written, where if you were very, very familiar with the novels or the lore books, you'd be finding all sorts of these fun little details that sort of connect to things that you've already read. Yep. So we definitely tried to put as much of that into Dragonspear as we could.
Okay, so you mentioned second edition D&D. So is the original Infinity Engine was built on second edition D&D, if I remember correctly. So the enhanced editions still retain the second edition kind of rule set under the hood. Okay, all right. Well, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I was just curious. I didn't know if they tried to update. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
well, I said I came from a tabletop background earlier, so I've done a lot. I actually started writing in third edition, but I played second edition, and it was definitely a bit of a shock to come back to second ed and just try and dredge up all those old rules memories and stuff.
Thaco.
And it did impact.
Thaco.
Like Thaco. It did impact the development of the game in some ways. We wanted to have one quest that involved a dwarf who was a wizard, and then it's like, oh, dwarves can't be wizards in second edition. Or McKin, the goblin shaman, who's one of the new companions. Originally, her character sheet said evil because goblins are always evil in second edition. There's no wiggle room on that.
None.
And, little details like that we would run into now and then and be like, oh, yeah, second edition.
Yeah. Wow. Well, but you're holding true to the heritage of Baldur's Gate. So, there's, like I said, that second edition was a very popular edition, and it launched many ships under the D&D banner. So I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Baldur's Gate, Sage of Dragonspear, which is not just an expansion, but it's an interquel. It tells the story between Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2. So not only did they want to be risky and do an expansion, they wanted to be even riskier and tell an expansion between two already established stories. So fascinating stuff. All right, when we come back, more with Beamdog on Shane Plays Radio.
Hold on to your butts.
June 11th to 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock, the River City Comic Expo is Arkansas's largest comic, toy, game, cosplay convention and now features the Little Rock Picture Show. Guests for 2016 include Neil Adams, Mike Zeck, James Aubert, Larry Hama, Michael Golden, and Arkansas's own Mitch and Elizabeth Brettweiser, John Lucas, and Dusty Higgins. You'll find booth after booth with artists and dealers representing comics, toys, books, movies, games, and so much more. So come on out to the River City Comic Expo, June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock. RiverCityComicExpo.com.
Fairly alarmed here.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net.
The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition, leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now.
Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions, Castles and Crusades is the original easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, we're back. Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. We are joined by Phillip Daigle and Amber Scott from Beamdog Incorporated. They are the torch carriers on the Baldur's Gate franchise. They've been updating the existing Baldur's Gate games to run on newer systems and then also on Android and iOS devices. And they're also they're going into a new phase of Baldur's Gate development, and they have an expansion that from what I understand, you need Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, but if you have that, you can get this expansion. And it actually tells the story between Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, and it's releasing March 31st. So that's like Thursday, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's coming out. We're right on the eve. So one thing, normally I do this at the end of the show, but I want to make sure to work it in. Phillip, I want to get your take on this. I always do a tweet of the week. So as a game designer, let me get your feedback on this tweet of the week. Okay, so this is from Slactus, Slaktus, and he says, game design jargon of the day, coyote time, in quotes, coyote time. The number of frames during which you can still execute a jump after running off a ledge. That's
okay.
That's. Have you ever invoked coyote time in any of your game design projects?
I don't think I've invoked coyote time, but I very quickly realized what he's going after with the whole Roadrunner thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is pretty hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, all right.
I like it. So
that's the tweet of the week. Well, I usually do that at the end of the show. It's a little bit ahead of time. So, what can you tell us? We've got. Time goes so quick in radio. We have about 4 minutes left. What's cool? What's great? What's amazing about Sage of Dragonspear?
So
oh my gosh,
I
don't even know where to start. There's so much. At GDC last week, we had one-on-one meetings with the press for 1 hour, and we were still talking as they were desperately trying to leave the room.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, we got to go."
And yeah. Phil, you probably have a million things to list right off the bat.
For me, the big things are that it's new Baldur's Gate story. Like, it's a continuation of the main storyline. It's not just, here's another adventure that happened to happen between Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. It actually bridges those two games and ties their stories together and strengthens the existing stories of both games. So I'm really, really excited about that. We're doing massive, gigantic battles that you've never, ever seen in any Infinity Engine game before.
Yeah,
like
I actually want to
on screen at once.
I actually want to zero in on that. Yeah, you mentioned 100 people on one screen at once, and I watched an interview you did with Game Reactor, and you said you've actually y'all have made changes to the UI and how the characters appear on the screen to be able to help pick your characters out in these bigger battles, because nothing's ever been done in like a game like this before, like this.
Yeah, so we added this little thing that highlights the character when you mouse over them, and it feels like a really, really tiny change, but in practice it makes it so that when you have 100 dudes clumped together in a thick, big battle, it's very, very easy to pick out the particular dude that you want to cast Fireball on.
Right.
And the important thing to remember is that all of these new enhancements that we've made to the UI that make stuff like that easier, they're toggleable. There's a lot of people out there who love the original 1998 experience, and they want that sort of very low-fidelity gameplay. That's perfectly fine, and we fully support it. If you want to switch back to the old school way, it's all right there in the game. Okay,
which is cool. Now,
for me,
yeah, go ahead, Amber.
For me, one of the coolest things, I mean, you talked about people having headcanons of Minsk and so forth, and it's funny because we actually, Andrew and I, the other writer, have our own headcanons about Dragonspear that we disagree on, so we actually have headcanons for our own game that we wrote. And, but, a lot of people at Beamdog worked on the original Baldur's Gate. Minsk was Cam Topher's D&D pen and paper character.
Oh, okay.
So he made the original Minsk, and he's one of our owners. So he can come right in and be like, Minsk is totally like this.
So wait, what was his name again?
Voice actors back.
The
Cameron Topher.
Okay, so he was Minsk, or his character was Minsk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
In the original D&D game with James O'Land, he, as the DM, Cam Topher was one of the players, and he came up with Minsk and Boo back in 1996 or 7.
Okay, so can you answer, or is this a trade secret that will never be revealed? Is Boo actually a miniature giant space hamster, or is he just a regular hamster?
Okay, so in this month, on Thursday we launched the Siege of Dragonspear themed issue of The Familiar. I mentioned before, you can read it at thefamiliar.beamdog.com, iOS and Android. And we actually, Cam had found his original Minsk character sheet, the pen and paper character sheet. We have a scan of it available, so you can go and look at the original. And Boo's just listed as a hamster, I think. But Cam told us that when he joined the game, he was a couple levels behind everybody else because he came in late.
Yeah.
And Minsk would get knocked unconscious in every battle, in the first round, because his hit points were so low.
Yeah.
So when he got his animal companion, it was every combat, Minsk would just fall unconscious immediately, and then Boo would run around and do all the actions. And so that was his way of still being able to participate in combat. But we got original voice actors back for almost all the companions we brought back from Baldur's Gate 1. So not only do we have that insight into Minsk when we wrote him, but we got Jim Cummings back to voice him.
That is great.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of
David Warner back as a mysterious figure. We've got Jennifer Hale back as Dinah Hare. Jim Messerman as Khalid and Edwin.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, Kevin Michael Richardson is the narrator. And, yeah, it was just an incredible experience to work with these voice actors again. They really brought that Baldur's Gate spirit back into Dragonspear.
All right. So, believe it or not, time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. I got to wrap. I can't believe we always...
Oh, my goodness.
Never enough time. So, a couple of things I wanted to mention that I saw in some interviews is there's actually a story mode you can toggle that doesn't have combat. There's some really amazing difficulty options that you've put in, and a lot of UI interface updates and things that you've done. So March 31st, there's multiple different editions that you can get. Go to the Beamdog website that's listed on my website, or just search for Beamdog. Listen, folks, I got to go. Thanks so much for being on, Phillip and Amber. Folks, this was Shane. Yeah, you're welcome. This was Shane Plays Radio, a journey into the things we love.